O.J. Simpson, Fame, Football, and Family. Early Life and Struggles. Orenthal James Simpson, known to the world as O.J., was born on July 9, 1947, in San Francisco, California. He grew up in the projects of the Potrero Hill neighborhood, a tough environment marked by poverty, crime, and instability. His parents, Eunice and Jimmy Lee Simpson, separated when O.J. was young, leaving his mother to raise him and his siblings in difficult conditions. From the beginning, O.J. faced hardship. He suffered from rickets, a bone condition caused by malnutrition, which left him bowlegged and weak in his childhood. He wore leg braces for several years, and kids often teased him about his awkward walk. Yet even in those tough times, O.J. displayed charisma and determination. Sports became his way out of the struggles of poverty and health problems. By his teenage years, O.J. found his calling in football. At Galileo High School in San Francisco, he showed early promise, though his grades and discipline were often poor. He wasn't a star student, but his natural athletic ability was undeniable. He played as a running back and caught the attention of coaches who saw that he had extraordinary speed, balance, and agility. College years and rise to fame. After high school, O.J. enrolled at the City College of San Francisco, a junior college, where he continued to play football. His performance was explosive. He quickly established himself as one of the best junior college running backs in the country. In 1967, he transferred to the University of Southern California, USC, joining one of the most prestigious college football programs in America. At USC, Simpson became a household name. He earned the nickname The Juice, a play on his initials O.J., and also a reference to electricity, symbolizing his power and energy on the field. In his first season at USC, he led the team to the Rose Bowl, scoring a memorable 64-yard touchdown run against UCLA that sealed his reputation as a game-changer. In 1968, O.J. won the Heisman Trophy, college football's most prestigious award, given annually to the best player in the nation. He rushed for a then-record 1,709 yards in just one season, dominating opponents with speed and strength that seemed almost superhuman. His Heisman win cemented his status as a national sports hero. NFL career, from athlete to icon. O.J. Simpson was selected as the 1 overall pick in the 1969 NFL Draft by the Buffalo Bills. Expectations were sky-high, but his early years in the league were rocky. The Bills' offensive line was weak, and Simpson struggled to make a big impact during his first few seasons. Many sports writers began labeling him a disappointment. That changed in 1972 when Lou Saban became the Bills' head coach. Saban rebuilt the offense around Simpson's strengths. In 1973, O.J. had a season that changed the course of NFL history. He became the first player in NFL history to rush for more than 2,000 yards in a single season, finishing with 2,003 yards in just 14 games. The NFL schedule was shorter then. That record-breaking season won him the league's Most Valuable Player, MVP, award, and transformed him into a superstar. Throughout the 1970s, Simpson was one of the most dominant players in the league. He led the NFL in rushing 4 times, was selected to 6 Pro Bowls, and was eventually inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1985. But O.J. wasn't just a football player, he was a cultural icon. Celebrity and Hollywood career. What made O.J. different from other athletes of his era was his ability to transcend sports. He became one of the first black athletes to achieve crossover appeal in mainstream American culture. He was handsome, charming, and photogenic, and advertisers saw him as a safe, marketable star. O.J. appeared in commercials for brands like Hertz Rent-A-Car, famously sprinting through airports in his business suit to show the speed of Hertz service. He became a fixture on television, appearing on talk shows, variety shows, and in films. Some of his notable movie roles included parts in The Towering Inferno, 1974, and later in the comedy series The Naked Gun, 1988–1994, where he played the bumbling Detective Nordberg. By the late 1970s and 1980s, Simpson was one of the most recognizable faces in America. He mingled with Hollywood celebrities, sports stars, and politicians. He lived in luxury homes, drove expensive cars, and was seen as the embodiment of the American dream, a boy who had risen from the ghettos of San Francisco to fame and fortune. Meeting Nicole Brown. In 1977, while still married to his first wife, Marguerite Whitley, O.J. Simpson met Nicole Brown, an 18-year-old waitress working at the Daisy, a trendy Beverly Hills nightclub. Nicole was blonde, glamorous, and stunningly beautiful. O.J. was instantly attracted to her, and they soon began a relationship. O.J. and Marguerite had 3 children together, but their marriage was already strained. By 1979, their marriage collapsed after the death of their young daughter Aaron, who drowned in the family pool at age 2. O.J. and Marguerite divorced, and by 1985, O.J. married Nicole. Their wedding took place in the lavish backyard of his Brentwood estate, and the couple appeared to have a fairy tale life. They had 2 children together, Sydney, born 1985, and Justin, born 1988. From the outside, the Simpsons were the picture of success, wealth, family, beauty, and fame. Domestic violence and troubled marriage. Behind closed doors, however, the relationship was deeply troubled. Nicole confided in friends and family that O.J. was controlling, jealous, and often violent. Over the years, police were called to their Brentwood home multiple times for domestic disturbances. One of the most famous incidents occurred on New Year's Day 1989. Nicole called 911 after being beaten by O.J. Police arrived to find her bruised and terrified. O.J. was arrested and charged with spousal battery. He eventually pleaded no contest and received probation, community service, and counseling. Despite this, the cycle of abuse and reconciliation continued. Nicole left O.J. several times but always returned, hoping he would change. By 1992, however, she had had enough. She filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. After the divorce, O.J. struggled to let go. He often appeared unannounced at Nicole's home, and friends later testified that he stalked her, checked her phone records, and displayed increasingly erratic behavior. Nicole told friends that she was afraid for her life. The image of perfection versus reality. Throughout the 1980s and early 1990s, the public only saw the glamorous side of O.J. Simpson, the football legend, the movie star, the charming celebrity pitchman. Few people outside his inner circle knew about the darker side of his marriage with Nicole. Nicole documented some of her fears and experiences in a diary, writing about O.J.'s violent outbursts, jealousy, and threats. She even told friends she thought O.J. would eventually kill her. Still, to the American public, O.J. Simpson was the juice, a beloved hero who had broken barriers in sports and entertainment. He attended charity events, hosted golf tournaments, and was welcomed everywhere from the NFL Hall of Fame to Hollywood red carpets. Tensions before the tragedy. In the months leading up to June 1994, the relationship between O.J. and Nicole grew increasingly tense. Though divorced, they were still connected through their children. Nicole wanted independence, dating other men and trying to live her own life, but O.J. struggled with jealousy and anger. Friends said that he appeared obsessed with Nicole, watching her closely and confronting her about her social life. She confided that she wanted to finally break free and protect her children from the instability of their relationship. This storm of jealousy, control, and unresolved anger would soon erupt in one of the most infamous crimes in American history, the murders of Nicole Brown and Ronald Goldman. The evening of June 12, 1994. Sunday, June 12, 1994, was a warm summer evening in Los Angeles. For most people, It was an ordinary night, but for Nicole Brown Simpson and her friend Ronald Goldman, it would end in tragedy. Nicole, 35 years old, had been divorced from O.J. Simpson for 2 years. Though she lived in a beautiful townhouse at 875 South Bundy Drive in Brentwood, her life was far from peaceful. She was attempting to move forward, raising her 2 children, Sydney and Justin, while dealing with her complicated relationship with O.J., who still tried to control her. That day, Nicole spent the afternoon with her family. She attended her daughter Sydney's dance recital at Paul Revere Middle School. O.J. Simpson was also there, seated separately from Nicole. Several witnesses later recalled the tense atmosphere between them. While they posed politely for family photos, Nicole avoided lingering around O.J. longer than necessary. After the recital, Nicole went with her parents and children to the nearby restaurant Mezzaluna Trattoria, an upscale Italian eatery in Brentwood. The restaurant was one of Nicole's favorites, and she was friendly with several of the staff, including a 25-year-old waiter named Ronald Goldman. Ronald Goldman, a life cut short. Ron Goldman was a charismatic and kind young man. Born in Illinois, he moved to Los Angeles in 1987 with dreams of becoming a model, actor, and entrepreneur. In the meantime, he worked as a waiter and occasionally did nightclub security jobs to make ends meet. Friends described him as upbeat, generous, and always willing to help others. On June 12, Ronald was working at Mezzaluna. During the meal, Nicole's mother accidentally left her eyeglasses at the restaurant. Goldman offered to drop them off at Nicole's house after his shift ended. This decision would tragically place him in the wrong place at the wrong time. Nicole's final hours. After dinner, Nicole and her family returned home. At around 9:45 p.m., she spoke to her mother on the phone, confirming that Ronald would bring the glasses by later. At approximately 10:00 p.m., neighbors recalled hearing Nicole's dog barking loudly and persistently. Some reported hearing screams, though the exact timeline was difficult to establish. Around 10:15 p.m., Ronald Goldman arrived at Nicole's townhouse. He parked his car outside, leaving the glasses safely in an envelope. Within minutes, both Nicole and Ron were brutally murdered. The murders. The crime was savage. Nicole was found just inside the front gate of her townhouse, lying in a pool of blood. She had been stabbed multiple times, with a deep slash across her throat that nearly decapitated her. Investigators later said the attack suggested extreme rage and personal animosity. Ronald Goldman's body was found nearby, close to a tree and the fence. He had been stabbed repeatedly in the chest, neck, and abdomen, with defensive wounds on his hands, suggesting he fought back against his attacker. His injuries were consistent with someone trying to protect himself from a knife-wielding assailant. The sheer brutality of the murders shocked even seasoned LAPD homicide detectives. Discovery of the bodies. At approximately 10:55 p.m., a neighbor walking his dog noticed Nicole's Akita wandering the streets. The dog, still on its leash, was agitated and covered in blood. The neighbor took the dog in and eventually brought it to another nearby resident, who recognized it as belonging to Nicole. Shortly after midnight, neighbors followed the dog back toward Nicole's townhouse. They discovered the horrific scene, the bodies of Nicole and Ronald lying outside the entryway, blood everywhere. Police were immediately called to the scene. The crime scene. LAPD officers arrived at 875 South Bundy Drive around 12:10 a.m. on June 13. They secured the area and began their investigation. Detectives quickly realized that this was not a random crime. It appeared personal, fueled by rage. Blood evidence was everywhere, on the walkway, on the gate, and near the bodies. A bloody glove was found at the scene. Shoe prints in blood, later identified as belonging to size 12 Bruno Magli shoes, were also documented. The detectives soon learned the identity of one of the victims, Nicole Brown Simpson. Given her connection to O.J. Simpson, one of the most famous men in America, the case instantly gained national attention. Notification of O.J. Simpson. Meanwhile, O.J. was at his Rockingham estate, just a few miles away. Detectives went to notify him of Nicole's death. When they arrived, they noticed suspicious details. There was no immediate answer at the door, though several cars were parked outside. Detectives saw blood spots on the driveway and on Simpson's white Ford Bronco, parked outside the house. A bloody glove, matching the one found at the crime scene, was discovered behind O.J.'s guest house. These discoveries immediately raised red flags. The evidence suggested a direct link between O.J. Simpson and the murders. O.J.'s whereabouts that night. Investigators reconstructed O.J.'s movements on the night of June 12. 6:30 p.m. He attended Sydney's dance recital with Nicole and family. 7:30 p.m. He returned home, reportedly had dinner, and prepared for a flight to Chicago scheduled later that night. 9:36 p.m. O.J.'s limousine driver, Alan Park, arrived at the Rockingham estate to take him to the airport. Park later testified that he rang the intercom several times but received no answer. He noticed the house lights were off, and O.J.'s Bronco wasn't in its usual spot. 10:40 p.m. Park saw a shadowy figure enter the house through the front door. Shortly after, O.J. appeared, claiming he had overslept. 11:45 p.m. Park drove O.J. to Los Angeles International Airport LAX. O.J. boarded a red-eye flight to Chicago. The timeline was damning. If O.J. committed the murders around 10:15 p.m., he could have returned home, cleaned up, and then left for the airport. Initial suspicions. By the morning of June 13, O.J. was in Chicago, staying at a hotel. When LAPD detectives reached him by phone to inform him of Nicole's death, he sounded shocked but asked few questions. He cut his trip short and flew back to Los Angeles. As news of the murders spread, the media swarmed Brentwood. Television crews, reporters, and photographers camped outside O.J.'s estate. The story was instantly national news. The glamorous ex-wife of a football legend had been brutally murdered. Privately, investigators already viewed O.J. as the prime suspect. His history of domestic violence against Nicole provided motive, and the blood evidence pointed in his direction. The autopsies. Autopsies were conducted by the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office. The findings confirmed the brutality of the attack. Nicole had been stabbed multiple times in the head and neck. The fatal wound was a deep slash across her throat, severing both carotid arteries. Her injuries suggested she was attacked first, possibly ambushed at her front gate. Ronald Goldman had 25 stab wounds, including defensive injuries on his hands, indicating he struggled with the attacker. He likely tried to intervene or fight back after Nicole was attacked. The coroner estimated the time of death between 10:00 p.m. and 10:30 p.m. Public reaction. The murders shocked Los Angeles and the nation. Nicole was young, beautiful, and well-known in social circles. O.J. was a beloved sports hero, actor, and celebrity. The case had all the elements of a media storm: fame, wealth, glamour, and shocking violence. As speculation grew, many in the public could not believe O.J. was involved. To millions of fans, he was the juice, the charming football legend who had risen from poverty to stardom. The idea that he could savagely murder his ex-wife and her friend seemed unthinkable. But for those who knew the troubled history between O.J. and Nicole, the suspicion was all too real. Friends recalled her saying she feared O.J. would kill her someday. Now, it appeared her fears had come true. The investigation intensifies. Over the next 2 days, the LAPD gathered evidence linking O.J. to the crime. Blood samples taken from the Rockingham estate matched the victims. A pair of bloody socks found in O.J.'s bedroom contained Nicole's blood. Police also discovered that O.J. had a fresh cut on his left hand when he returned from Chicago. He gave inconsistent explanations for the injury, at first claiming he cut it on a glass in his hotel room, then later suggesting it happened at home. The physical evidence was mounting, but O.J. Simpson maintained his innocence. He agreed to speak with police voluntarily, but his statements raised more questions than answers. The turning point. By June 16, 1994, just 4 days after the murders, prosecutors had gathered enough evidence to file charges against O.J. Simpson. The district attorney's office charged him with 2 counts of first-degree murder for the deaths of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman. A warrant was issued for his arrest. What happened next, O.J.'s refusal to surrender and the infamous Bronco chase, would transform the case into one of the most unforgettable spectacles in American history: the chase and the trial of the century. The arrest warrant. On June 17, 1994, 4 days after the brutal murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman, the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office formally charged O.J. Simpson with 2 counts of first-degree murder. By that morning, the LAPD expected O.J. to surrender himself peacefully. His legal team, led by high-profile defense attorney Robert Shapiro, had assured prosecutors that Simpson would turn himself in by 11:00 a.m. But 11:00 a.m. came and went. Simpson never appeared. When police arrived at his Rockingham estate to execute the arrest warrant, they discovered that O.J. was gone. His white Ford Bronco was missing. Even more troubling, Simpson had left behind a letter addressed to his mother and the public. The farewell letter. In the letter, Simpson proclaimed his innocence but also wrote passages that sounded like a suicide note. He told friends and family to remember the real O.J. and signed the note with a sad farewell. "Don't feel sorry for me. I've had a great life." When the letter was read aloud to the media, the public was stunned. Many feared O.J. was about to take his own life. The Bronco chase begins. That afternoon, O.J. Simpson was spotted riding in the backseat of a white Ford Bronco, owned and driven by his longtime friend and former teammate, Al Cowlings. O.J. sat slumped in the back, holding a handgun to his head, threatening to kill himself if police tried to arrest him. At 6:45 p.m., the Los Angeles Police Department located the vehicle on the 405 freeway. Soon after, news helicopters began following overhead. What started as a police pursuit quickly turned into the most famous car chase in American history. The low-speed pursuit. Unlike typical high-speed chases, the Bronco traveled slowly, often under 40 miles per hour. Police cars followed cautiously, not wanting to provoke O.J. into using the gun on himself. On television, millions of Americans watched live as the white Bronco crawled along Southern California freeways, surrounded by flashing police lights. An estimated 95 million people tuned in, interrupting regular programming, including the NBA Finals between the Houston Rockets and New York Knicks. Networks cut away from the game to broadcast the chase. On freeway overpasses, crowds of fans gathered, holding signs that read, "Run, O.J., run." Some cheered and waved as the Bronco passed, treating the surreal pursuit like a sporting event. Others stood in disbelief, wondering how their beloved football hero had ended up here. Inside the Bronco, police negotiators spoke with Al Cowlings by phone. Cowlings begged officers not to provoke O.J., warning that Simpson was distraught and suicidal. The surrender. After nearly 2 hours, the chase ended at O.J.'s Rockingham estate around 8:00 p.m. Police surrounded the property as thousands of spectators gathered outside. Finally, O.J. surrendered peacefully. He was taken into custody and charged with the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman. Inside the Bronco, police found $8,750 in cash, a passport, a fake goatee and mustache, a change of clothes, and the handgun O.J. had held to his head. To many, this looked like a getaway kit, suggesting that O.J. had considered fleeing the country rather than facing trial. The chase cemented O.J. Simpson's fall from grace. Overnight, he went from beloved sports icon to accused murderer, his face on every television screen in America. The trial of the century begins. O.J.'s trial began on January 24, 1995, in Los Angeles Superior Court. Presiding over the case was Judge Lance Ito, a jurist known for his eccentric personality and tendency to allow cameras in the courtroom. From the start, the case was unlike anything America had seen before. The courtroom was packed with reporters, and every moment was broadcast live to millions of viewers around the world. It wasn't just a murder trial, it was a television event. The prosecution's case. The state of California, led by prosecutors Marcia Clark and Christopher Darden, argued that O.J. Simpson murdered Nicole and Ron in a jealous rage. They presented powerful forensic evidence. DNA evidence. Blood found at the crime scene on O.J.'s Bronco and inside his home matched Simpson, Nicole, and Ronald Goldman. The chance of the blood belonging to someone other than O.J. was calculated at 1 in 170 million. The gloves. A pair of leather gloves, one found at the crime scene, the other at Simpson's estate, contained blood from both victims and O.J. The prosecution argued that O.J. had worn them during the murders. Shoe prints. Bloody footprints at the scene matched a rare pair of Bruno Magli size 12 shoes, the same size O.J. wore. Only 299 pairs of those shoes were sold in the U.S. Domestic violence history. The prosecution highlighted O.J.'s history of abusing Nicole, arguing it established motive and a pattern of escalating violence. Marcia Clark told the jury, "This is a case about a man who beat his wife, and finally in 1994 he killed her." The defense, the Dream Team. O.J. assembled what became known as the Dream Team of defense lawyers. Robert Shapiro, lead attorney at the start. Johnny Cochran, brilliant trial lawyer who became the face of the defense. F. Lee Bailey, famous for cross-examinations. Alan Dershowitz, Harvard law professor and appellate expert. Robert Kardashian, a close friend of O.J., who read his farewell letter to the media. Barry Scheck and Peter Neufeld, experts in challenging DNA evidence. The defense strategy was clear: attack the credibility of the police and the forensic evidence. The race factor and Mark Fuhrman. A key element of the defense was the argument that O.J. was the victim of racist police misconduct. Central to this was LAPD Detective Mark Fuhrman, who discovered the bloody glove at Simpson's home. The defense accused Fuhrman of planting evidence to frame O.J. They uncovered recordings of Fuhrman using racial slurs and boasting about abusing black suspects. This revelation damaged the prosecution's case and fed into the defense's narrative that the LAPD was corrupt and racially biased. Johnny Cochran told the jury that O.J. was targeted because of his race, famously declaring, "If it doesn't fit, you must acquit." This was in reference to the glove evidence. During a dramatic courtroom moment, O.J. was asked to try on the gloves. They appeared too small, leading Cochran to argue that the prosecution's key evidence didn't match his client. DNA confusion. Although the DNA evidence was overwhelming by scientific standards, it was relatively new in 1995. The defense cast doubt on the reliability of the testing, suggesting contamination, mishandling, and incompetence by LAPD crime labs. Barry Scheck, one of the defense's DNA experts, grilled forensic technicians on every possible error. To the jury, the science seemed confusing and uncertain, creating reasonable doubt. The media circus. The trial was broadcast daily, turning the lawyers, witnesses, and even Judge Ito into celebrities. Tabloid headlines dominated supermarkets. Courtroom sketches, books, and interviews saturated the airwaves. The public became obsessed with every detail: O.J.'s demeanor, Marcia Clark's hairstyle, Johnny Cochran's soundbites, and Judge Ito's eccentric rulings. It was reality television before reality TV existed. The trial exposed deep racial divisions in America. Polls showed that most white Americans believed O.J. was guilty, while most black Americans believed he was innocent or had been framed. For many African Americans, the trial symbolized decades of distrust toward the LAPD, which had been accused of brutality and racism, most notably in the beating of Rodney King just 3 years earlier. Closing arguments and verdict. After months of testimony, the case went to the jury on September 29, 1995. They deliberated for less than 4 hours, an astonishingly short time given the complexity of the case. On October 3, 1995, the verdict was announced. An estimated 100 million people watched on live television. Workplaces, schools, and shops paused to hear the outcome. The jury found O.J. Simpson not guilty of the murder of Nicole Brown Simpson, not guilty of the murder of Ronald Goldman. The courtroom erupted. O.J. wept with relief, while the Goldman and Brown families sat in shock. The reaction across America was sharply divided. In many black communities, people celebrated the acquittal, viewing it as a rare victory against a biased justice system. In many white communities, people were outraged, convinced that a guilty man had walked free. The trial was over, but the story of O.J. Simpson was far from finished. Aftermath, civil trial, downfall, and legacy. The acquittal and its shockwaves. On October 3, 1995, when Judge Lance Ito read the words "not guilty" in the packed courtroom, the reverberations were felt across the nation. O.J. Simpson, once accused of one of the most brutal double murders in modern American history, walked free. Outside the courthouse, crowds erupted in both jubilation and outrage. In south-central Los Angeles, many African Americans cheered, hugging one another in celebration. For them, the verdict represented something bigger than O.J. Simpson himself. It was a rare moment when a black man, backed into a corner by a historically biased justice system, had beaten the LAPD. But in many white communities, the verdict was met with disbelief and anger. Polls taken in the days after revealed stark racial divides. Roughly 70% of black Americans agreed with the acquittal, while over 70% of white Americans thought he was guilty. It was clear the trial had become more than just about the murders. It was a mirror reflecting America's ongoing struggles with race, class, and justice. The victims' families. For the families of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman, the acquittal was devastating. They believed the evidence against O.J. was overwhelming and could not accept that he had been freed. Fred Goldman, Ron's father, became one of the most outspoken critics of the verdict, vowing to continue seeking justice for his son. The families also noted O.J.'s behavior after the trial. Instead of grieving privately or showing remorse, he seemed to revel in his freedom. He partied at nightclubs, played golf, and gave interviews. To many, this conduct appeared callous, as if he had no concern for the 2 lives that had been lost. The civil trial. But the legal battle wasn't over. In 1996, the Goldman and Brown families filed a wrongful death lawsuit against O.J. Simpson in civil court. Unlike criminal cases, where the standard is beyond a reasonable doubt, civil trials require only a preponderance of the evidence. The civil trial began in October 1996 and was very different from the criminal case. Cameras were banned from the courtroom, keeping the media circus at bay. The defense team was also smaller, without the full dream team that had defended O.J. previously. This time, the evidence was overwhelming. The DNA science, shoe prints, and blood evidence were presented more clearly and convincingly than during the criminal trial. Jurors heard about O.J.'s history of abuse toward Nicole, including chilling 911 calls where she screamed for help as O.J. threatened her. On February 4, 1997, the jury found O.J. Simpson liable for the wrongful deaths of Nicole Brown and Ronald Goldman. He was ordered to pay $33.5 million in damages to the victims' families. Although Simpson claimed he was nearly broke, the verdict financially crippled him. The Goldman family spent years pursuing his assets, seizing royalties from his memorabilia, book deals, and other income streams. O.J. after the trials. Following the civil trial, O.J. Simpson's life spiraled further downward. His image was destroyed, his finances drained, and his once glamorous lifestyle reduced to a shadow of itself. He moved to Florida in the late 1990s, partly because the state's laws protected his home and pension from being seized to pay civil judgments. He lived in relative isolation, but still played golf and occasionally appeared in media. In 2006, O.J. sparked another national controversy when he attempted to publish a book titled, "If I Did It." The book was framed as a hypothetical account of how he might have committed the murders, though Simpson claimed it was simply a thought experiment. The public was outraged. The Goldman family, still seeking justice, won the rights to the book in court. They